Hello everyone, my name is Ijeoma Ejekwudom, and on the 24th of October, Saturday, I was asked to do a spoken words piece at the NSARS protest here in Oakland. And after speaking, I had a couple of people ask if there was any way to access that information on a digital space. And so I decided to do this video as a means of sharing that information with them. And please be patient because it is long. As I struggled to formulate my thoughts, one thing was clear to me after speaking to loved ones and watching discussions ensue about this moment in our history. It is clear that the words our youth need to hear are words of encouragement, empathy, resistance, and reassurance. Everyone is feeling something unique, and our youth especially. Through NSARS, we're seeing history repeat itself right in front of our eyes for the first time. We're starting to consider the catastrophe, confusion, fear, and displacement possible when a nation has to go to war with itself. And along the same line of thought, we understand that the death of ourselves and the ones we love is guaranteed with or without this fight for our future. The reality of this past Tuesday is that we're from a country whose leaders will kill us before they ever agree to surrender power back to the people who gave it to them. What every young Nigerian must start to find right this moment is their place in the fight for our liberation. Shehu Kuti eloquently said that we cannot deploy untrained soldiers to battle without considering the consequences. This is where I find my place in our fight. It is my duty not only to encourage my brothers and sisters to believe in a more secure and prosperous future, but also to help train this brave and passionate bunch. So I must raise awareness in the mind and the heart of the liberation fighter to some important details of our history. The things I will say here today, some of us already know, while others may feel that something bigger is happening without knowledge of the details. In 1929, the Aba Women's Protest took place. In protesting taxation and bad governance, our women came out in the streets of Nigeria, much like many of us are doing today. Under the governance of colonial miscreants, gunfire was opened on these women who peacefully protested. In 1947, Colliery Workers' Union legally protested for their right to better pay and standards of living. Once again, in a standoff between our people and colonial forces, gunfire was opened on a crowd of protesters, killing 28. Today, this event in our history is known as the Iva Valley Massacre. And among other acts of protest in Nigerian modern history, there's the 1944 King's College Boys Protest, the 1945 Railway Workers Labor Strike, and the 1947 Abeokuta Women's Union Protest. At midnight on the 21st of June 1945, Nigeria was on lockdown, and much like today, the government attempted to diffuse protests by bribing, harassing, and arresting leaders of these efforts. It is important to remember that in those times, Nigeria was still under colonial rule. What the youth must learn is that we've traded one slave master for another, only this time they look like us. And the oppressed have become the oppressors. And these times, a president elected by the people to work for the people has the audacity to tell us not to take his agreement to our demands as weakness. This is supporting evidence that we are regarded insignificant in the minds of our own chosen leaders. While the fight for our humanity must continue, the youth must not be deceived into thinking that the problem of Nigeria rests only within the borders of Nigeria. We must begin to understand ourselves as Nigerians in relation to the world around us. And Nigeria must recognize its position in the war being waged against African descendants everywhere. We must open our eyes and see the trends happening across the globe. End SARS, a Nigerian protest against police brutality and bad governance. Congo is bleeding, a protest bringing awareness to the imperialist-funded agenda, enabling the military forces of other African countries to invade and kill innocent Congolese people for their natural resources. Anglophone crisis, a humanitarian crisis in Cameroon that has seen hundreds killed and thousands displaced in an effort to francophonize the legal system in Anglo regions. Africans killing Africans and destabilizing Africa for foreign interests. And my next, a South African response to violence against women. Rape national emergency, a Liberian action against the 50% increase in rape cases during this pandemic alone against women and children. Child trafficking in Ghana and Ivory Coast, protesting against child slavery. George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, an American response to police brutality. What is the trend here? Black nations and groups across the world are in a perpetual state of hardship. Africans need to rise for Africans, and Africa needs to rise for Africa. We cannot afford any longer to be separated, as we have seen that this does not serve our global interest, but instead serves the agenda of our oppressors. African descendants must stop selling out their people. We must together call out these traitors that work against our collective interest to keep us enslaved and dependent. Africa has been fundamental to the global prosperity of so-called developed nations. And at this very moment in history, African descendants need to wake up to the commitment of serving the African interest, forgoing differences in culture, tribe, and most importantly, religion. Nobody is coming to save us but ourselves, not the UN, not anybody. Power is being monopolized by the powerful by turning our differences into conflicting interests, leaving you and I, the majority, to fight each other while ignoring the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is the illusion of our freedom, an illusion facilitated by our inability to see the shackles around our necks and feet. So what can we do about this? There is an education intrinsic to action. You must learn about the problem to solve it, and most problems are complex. The revolution is a liberation that must first take place in the minds of the people. At this very moment, we must put every effort into studying our situation. We help each other by removing the blindfolds that have rested on our faces for far too long, separating us from the true knowledge of who we are and how we've arrived here today. There is no shortcut to this knowledge, and there is no better weapon in this world more powerful than knowledge, not even a soldier's rifle. So we must begin to open our minds, abandoning dogmas that discourage our right to think freely without fear. We must stop listening to government officials who tell us not to worry about details that they are taking care of. It tells us that they think we are incapable of making intelligent decisions for our own circumstances. We must continue to gather together and make decisions for ourselves and our future. We must decide within our gatherings what types of changes we want to see and pursue them fearlessly, knowing we have allies in each other. And this is where purpose meets passion. Voting for people to make decisions on our behalf behind closed doors just won't work anymore. And policies that don't preserve the interest of the people cannot last. Young people everywhere are showing us a new way of doing things. And now the government is running around looking for leaders of the rebellion to silence. What they can now see is happening is a leaderless revolution, one even more difficult to counter. We are seeing that we cannot place our trust and hopes in politicians who hide from us in mansions or chambers, high-rises, and bulletproof cars. The level of security these people feel they need to have to protect themselves from the public tells us that they are well aware of the pains and dissatisfaction of the people. These leaders in our countries are simply part of a long-standing agenda to keep Africa enslaved and hopeless. Every effort is being made to starve us of our voices via threats, murder, gaslighting, and more. A one leg in, one leg out approach to our liberation has no history of success and no real future. Our generation has the unique opportunity through technology to finally come face to face with our identical devastation, the African crisis. This is the moment we can decide to put aside our differences and truly fight for and with each other. A friend of mine who is connected to Fela Kuti's legacy recently told me a story. I was told that Fela was presented many deals to come and live in America during his lifetime. The activist that many of us love and honor the memory of said this about the propositions he had been offered. A king does not leave his kingdom. A king who leaves his kingdom loses his freedom and becomes a slave. Many people run away from life in Nigeria, forgetting that we are the solution to Nigeria. Some of us leave with the idea to return when we have acquired enough to be able to make a difference. Some others leave with the feeling of fear and hate. It is not my place to tell anyone what is best for them. It is, however, my intention to encourage those who, even at this moment, know that there is space and need for them back home. Don't abandon your home, because when you return, it may not be there. There is something that has been on my mind of recent, and given the current crisis across Black nations and the public response, I have seen many posts and comments that insinuate that what we need is a young man to ... Each time I see something of this nature, it confirms what I have understood over time to be an issue in our problem solving. In 2020, some of us still only see men as a solution to the problems that men themselves have created. Today, I hope to offer a new thought, one that pinpoints women as a solution to the healing of our nations. We must begin to study and acknowledge the successes of female leadership, remembering that at every moment men have fought for a nation, the women have fought just as hard and have been effective. I'll leave you with this final thought, a quote from a book by Carney Ross. One act believed in and repeated by others becomes material and dramatic change. What future will we believe in, and what actions will we repeat from this moment onwards? May our decisions honor the lives of those who have died in this fight for our freedom.